Omnevo is one of this industry's leading positive disruptors. Why? Well, the company empowers next-level digital ancillary revenue innovation for aviation and mobility providers. Arguably, there's never been a greater need, and Omnevo have a fine pedigree with some real success stories behind them. They believe that airports and airlines alike must now seize a competitive advantage by taking control of the digital customer journey. The video that follows details the why and how any airline or airport can achieve that through a digital marketplace. Michael, welcome. Could you briefly tell us exactly what Omnevo does as a company?
The customer experience has changed over the last 12 months. Passengers expect a seamless digital journey. We at Omnevo provide these products and solutions for an airline to provide products and service at different touch points along the journey, pre-flight, in-flight and post-flight.
What would you identify as the key trends?
We are involved at the moment in many projects where pre-order and pre-select is a key theme for the airlines. And that makes sense because sustainability also is a big trend in the industry, and these activities support the reduction of waste, weight, and are supporting a more mindful and more sustainable travel in the future. Yeah, another trend we see in the industry, which is very interesting, is that traditionally the shopping experience is segregated. You've got basically loyalty shops and offerings on that side, and other offerings at the core sides of the airlines, which are services and food and beverage offerings. And where we see a major trend now is to actually combine that into one marketplace. That marketplace solution gives a huge opportunity for airlines to create a seamless digital customer experience and increase the cross and upselling.
So a digital concierge effectively extends throughout the entire passenger journey. Could you just briefly walk us through the key elements you provide?
Yeah, it's very important to look at the entire journey, everything from the pre-flight, at the airport, in-flight and post-flight. And we are able to integrate into these touch points. So in the early stage, when passengers are browsing, in the booking, at the airport, on board, and after the flight. And it's very important because then we integrate with the P&R and in the booking process, as well as in the loyalty and the payment. And we're able to basically offer passengers products and services along that customer journey. Airline to actually create more ancillary revenues along these touch points.
How would you define the major advantages of your service platform?
Yeah, one of the big advantages of our platform is it's modular. So for an airline, it doesn't really matter where you want to start. And we are big fans of doing MVPs to test it out and see the results of these implementations. And I think another big advantage is we are API first based. So it's a technology platform which is built on cloud and the latest technology and can be very, very quickly and easily integrated with the existing architecture of the airline.
Now with COVID, the airline business in particular has witnessed change like never before. Digitalization, though, is now once again gaining momentum. What would you say are the key differentiators that Omnevo provides?
Digitalization is a very broad term and can mean a lot of different things. We at Omnevo provide digital ancillary revenue journeys. So that means we are concentrating of everything which makes money for the airline, but which is not related directly to the seat booking.
Kieran, what positives have you drawn from the last 18 months in the aviation sector?
It's definitely not easy to think of positives too much, but what we're seeing is actually a certain mind shift. There are a couple of trends happening. One is, for example, that there are more ambitions to limit silos. Airlines have also lost a lot of staff, so they have to do things more efficiently. And overall, there's also a drive towards more digitalization and the realization, especially on the full service carrier side, that ancillary revenues have to become a much more vital part of the P&L. Which was not always the case to the same extent. So this move towards, being more of a consumer brand, being a marketplace provider, having the ability to sell much more than just ticket-related ancillaries is a key trend that we are seeing.
We heard from Nicholas Painter-Bosworth earlier about certainly there's greater momentum behind digitalization, but that a lot of this is actually as much down to it being a passenger-driven element rather than it being airline-driven. Would you think, or is it a mixture of both?
So during the COVID pandemic, of course, what really happened on a passenger experience point of view is that we have all, as human beings, gotten accustomed to being able to home deliver, order our food, have choice. You know, even my mother started doing online shopping, which I never thought would happen. And all of these trends, of course, have accelerated significantly in the last 2 years. And now when passengers are flying again, they are kind of confronted with an operational structure that is still not very digital for most airlines. So this is definitely opening up significant new opportunities for airlines to drive revenue through better digital services, better food, upselling, cross-selling, and more of a retail and direct-to-consumer experience.
So you would argue, wouldn't you, that Omnevo is perfectly positioned to help accelerate the pace of change, largely because of the platform that you now offer the business community?
I think what we have gone through as Omnevo in the last 2 years is unique in the sense that, of course, we come from a legacy of providing very sophisticated e-commerce solutions in the duty-free and travel retail space. And through the crisis and through our merger with Shifteo, we have now come to a place where we can provide a true end-to-end solution from catering management to pre-order, pre-select, to buy on board, to integration with the in-flight systems, to e-commerce, to loyalty marketing, etc. So this kind of end-to-end sophistication has never existed in the marketplace before. And so we are seeing an immense interest at the moment from airlines that all want to start somewhere along those lines. Sometimes it starts with, we need to do a better job at doing the buy on board. Sometimes it starts with, we want to stop buy on board and we want to do more pre-order or more, e-commerce driven sales. But in the end, the true power lies in connecting all of these silos together, because you cannot remove the silos. They simply exist. But it is about capturing the different data sources, creating a unique customer identification, and then being able to sell to those passengers along the entire journey. That has never been possible to that extent because of technological limitations.
Kien, with AOE, you've been running it for 20 years now as an e-commerce company. Would you say that the aviation sector and airlines in particular are still lagging behind in terms of what you're doing for other clients?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely interesting when we started in this business to see how siloed everything still is in the aviation industry. And definitely the aviation industry has worked very much as operational companies, and they have tried to focus on operational efficiencies primarily. So they haven't focused as much on how can I drive digital customer experience, how can I actually do proper data aggregation, which in the end is the foundation of good e-commerce. So in many ways, airlines are still at the beginning of things where classic e-commerce companies have 10 years head start. So it is very interesting to be able to bring that experience from more classic industries into the aviation industry. For example, we help companies like Sony build the global PlayStation network or things like that, right? So this is definitely a big opportunity for airlines, because we all know the value of loyalty systems to airlines and to the finance ecosystem as a whole, and airlines are completely under leveraging that possibility still, because in the end they have very rich data sets and they can sell a lot more than ticket-related revenues to these passengers. And this is a new empowerment that we're delivering to the airlines that has not existed in a classic outsourcing world before, where you would say, I'm just renting my tube to someone to sell duty-free. This is the old way of thinking. The new way of thinking is, I'm an airline, I have great passengers that like me, what else can I offer them?
You talk omnichannel. How much difference is there going to be between what is delivered for legacy carriers as opposed to low-cost carriers?
There are definitely some very distinct differences in what the needs are of both. So, for example, when we're thinking about our flagship customer, Singapore Airlines, who has really had a focus on creating this unique omni-channel sense of place customer experience that is frankly the best place to shop in Singapore. You know, that was the vision of it. That's very different, of course, from a low-cost carrier who is thinking about, you know, how can I actually do incremental increase in selling to my passengers? You know, how can I do a more integrated approach? How can I do better conversions? How can I have less food waste? That is a very, very key driver in the buy on board programs. And if you can leverage significant advancements when you combine pre-order, pre-select, and buy on board in one technology, that can reduce cost by up to 20 to 30%. And so there's definitely very distinct differences. But the exciting thing for us is we're getting you know, this interest from all sides of that spectrum. And so learning every day, you know, like how you can improve these airline operations in ways that you didn't even realize before is really exciting.
So in truth, it's never going to be a one-size-fits-all solution from you, is it?
Absolutely, and the whole way that our solution is built, it is very much a modular component-based solution. And we can go from a pure, I need an EPOS to sell on board, like we have now proven with even very small airlines that are just starting up, to these complete end-to-end marketplace solutions with CRM, with loyalty management, with identity management, and everything, the whole 9 yards, and everything in between. So this is really one of the greatest advantages of having invested a lot of time in a modular architecture that scales, versus what we're seeing a lot in the general, you know, product software ecosystem, that, you know, companies bring out a solution and try to make it one size fits all, and then it ends up of course being easier to sell, and there's less work to integrate and less work to customize, but it doesn't quite fit the needs of the specific airline or customer in general. And of course it makes it much harder for an airline to distinguish themselves, because in the end, being able to have a clear distinction, what is my core market, what is my key USPs that I want to bring across, what is unique about my passengers, that actually is what drives success of such a digital retailing program.
I want to develop that a little bit and talk more about architecture, tech and data, and would refer to Kasper Potega to answer those questions. Kasper, what about the tech and the data? I mean, what's actually involved here, and who controls what?
The issue with data is actually very much similar to the organizational issues that airlines face, in that it's very much siloed. So you will have some pieces of information being stored in something like a booking system where you have the transactional data, but on the other hand you will have information in a CRM where you store your marketing and marketing contact information, and you have a lot of effort in actually coordinating this, bringing this together and creating something out of this. And it becomes even worse if the information around touchpoints with customers and transactions with customers is stored in a system that is being owned by a third party, which happens very often if an airline outsources part of its business, for example in the catering or the retail area. And so what we believe is that it's very much important for the airline, even if they outsource part of the business, which is totally fine, to own some of the technology or most of the technology that is involved in this, so that all of the customer interactions, all of the transactions that are happening are being stored within that system and can be used to actually generate insights out of this and continuously improve the business.
So what then are the core tech elements that Omnevo brings to the party?
I believe the most important elements of the solution that we're providing are everything that makes it a truly omni-channel solution, which means that we're aggregating all of the information from all of the different touchpoints into one central system. This involves an identity management system, which helps us allow the end customer to identify against our system during the complete course of their journey. It includes a recommendation engine that captures all of the interactions of customers throughout all of the touchpoints, so that we can create recommendations that actually make sense and not only enhance the customer's interactions, but also help us sell more in the end. And last but not least, of course, order management is one central piece of this, which helps us aggregate orders from all of the touchpoints that we provide, and also help us fulfill all of the orders in several ways, including delivery methods that are maybe not airline typical, apart from the, of course, delivery to seat, but also things like home delivery, international delivery, delivery to hotel, or even delivery to gate.
What do you see as the main challenges, the barriers to airlines to prevent them from effectively rolling out an end-to-end platform?
The main challenges that we're seeing is that you have to unite the silos that are reflected in the organization, but also in the IT landscape of airlines, which means that you not only have to be a good provider of a good product, but also an expert in integrating technology. And this is where it actually helps us to have year-long experience in complex IT integration projects, because it's not an issue for us to work with all different kinds of systems and interactions between systems, being it legacy systems that have been running for 20 years or modern APIs that we very happily integrate with.
So following on from what Casper's just said, he believes very strongly that airlines need to take control, whether they actually manage the project in-house or outsource. So either way, what's the criteria they should adopt to enable them to make the best decision?
So there are different philosophies. As I mentioned earlier, some airlines still think in a way, we are a transport company and we want to see how we can also make some additional money, and the easiest way to do that is just to outsource it. However, the reality has proven that when you do that, you can reach a certain pinnacle of revenues. But the only way to actually go way beyond that pinnacle of revenue is if you as an airline control the customer journey throughout all the touch points. And of course, that is now mainly digital touch points. Because it is very difficult for, let's say, an outsourced classic duty-free supplier. How do they reach the customer before flying? They don't, because they don't have that customer data record. They don't have the ability to do emails to, marketing to the passenger. They don't send the check-in email to that passenger. They don't handle the passenger at the airport. Yeah, so all of these touch points are completely missed out by an outsourced party. This is why it is a very clear decision if you want to move past that pinnacle and have ancillary revenue become stronger than core flying revenues, that you need to control much more of that customer journey, which means owning the data, having the access to that golden source of data. We all know data is worth a lot more than everything else, and then being able to capitalize on that. So this is really key, and frankly, it is a kind of journey that takes some time, because for an airline it is also a complex challenge. Yeah, because they come from a legacy very often where they have outsourced a lot, and then to insource everything in a period where you have just had to lay off potentially tens of thousands of staff is not an easy undertaking. But many airlines are starting to realize that if they want, now is a chance to do it better than they did it before. And so this is one of the things that we are really helping facilitate.
You talked earlier about how the operational side of the airline business was still key to everything that they do, and that arguably the ancillary revenue side of their business was still largely untapped. Do you want to develop those points?
So airlines over the last years have grown significantly in experience on how to sell tickets, obviously. So they have learned to work with OTAs, with distribution channels, with NDC, with how do I use affiliate marketing, how do I do bundling, how do I do dynamic pricing, a lot of the things that are common in e-commerce as well. However, they have not yet extended all of this know-how into the ancillary space. In the ancillary space, they typically just forward you off to a rental car company, forward you off to another affiliate, or outsource a duty-free program, etc. The approach that we see and that we are driving is that we can use the exact same channels, the exact same competencies of selling tickets in a much more omni-channel way to ancillaries as well, to create marketplaces that combine all of them, that make it seamless for the customer to book additional services that might not be fulfilled by the airline, but because they are so seamlessly integrated, seem like they're fulfilled by the airline. And this is really the key thing. And especially during COVID, when the actual flight revenues were so low, we saw how the ancillary revenues, as long as they didn't require people to fly, were exploding across the board. And this is something that many airlines couldn't capitalize on because they didn't have an e-commerce approach for their ancillaries yet that they controlled and they managed.
But you've been around the business for over 20 years, as we said earlier, and that you've worked for some major international corporations. So, do you think that what you do for them is translatable to the airline sector?
Yes, absolutely, because I think it's pretty clear to everybody that every customer journey starts digitally nowadays. And the key thing is, how can I use a digital journey that starts digitally, might be physical along the way, and then becomes digital again throughout the life cycle? How can I make sure that that is actually a seamless journey? And airlines have too much been focused on, I need to make sure that the actual flying with me works operationally well, and the customer is happy about that part. Yeah, but they haven't been focused enough on what can I do before they're flying, what can I do after they're flying, what can I do if they're not flying at all, because they're still my customer. And a lot of focus has been on frequent flyers, but once someone has flown with you one time, you can potentially use them as an omni-channel customer, to call it that way, and not as a flying passenger. And then really take this approach of building a consumer-focused brand. And in the past, we have seen a few airlines take that route. Singapore is definitely a great example. They don't only have KrisShop, they also have KrisFlyer, they have Kris Plus, they have their own crypto wallet. So they're creating an ecosystem. Similar things can be said about Emirates and Skywards. They have created a real brand for themselves that now does their own concerts, that creates a whole value proposition, even if I'm not flying. Yeah, and this has to be a key focus for airlines, to become more consumer brands, so that they move away from being replaceable commodities, because frankly flying is a commodity, so everything around that is what will distinguish the experience.
So many pundits are suggesting that flying is going to become a less profitable business for both airlines and airports. So if flying does indeed become a less profitable business in the future, what would you identify for both airlines and airports as other ways where they can stay relevant and stay in business?
Of course, the challenges are quite distinctly different for airlines and airports, but airlines have one big advantage. They have the customer data. So for them, and this is our message to them also, is, think of yourself more as a consumer-focused brand. Start selling things to your passengers independent of flying. Start building an ecosystem of services, etc., that you can become an aggregator to sell essentially through one marketplace to the passengers. For airports, it's a bit different. On the physical side, of course, some airports have tried to become destinations in their own right, like Changi in Singapore, Munich with their surfing, wave surfing thing that they have built at the airport, and other opportunities for people to come there just to hang out. But on the digital front, airports absolutely need to invest in knowing more about their passengers digitally, because they don't have that natural access to them. And so building a customer identification, a single customer view, starting to build premium services for these customers through loyalty, for example, etc., has to be a key focus for airports, because the general spend per pax is likely going to continue to decrease, as it has for the last 10 years pre-COVID. And so this is definitely something that airports have to look at more, to also become digital destinations and just not physical destinations.
Just moving on, as a business, you're also involved in the rail sector. What parallels can you draw from that business as well?
Yeah, the rail sector is something we got involved in a lot deeper now because of our merger with Shifteo, who has already had a strong footprint in the rail market. We now run rail operations for operators such as Eurostar, Thales, TGV in France, etc. And the challenges of doing onboard operations for a railway operator is actually even more complex than for an aircraft. Just think, you're flying an aircraft and in the middle of the flight the crew changes. This is how it works for rails. And so the complexities are much higher, which also means that the potential for food waste is higher, the potential for losses are higher, etc. And so digitalizing that properly end-to-end has a significant benefit to the operator. But where they haven't really gotten into yet is, of course, what airlines have been doing for longer already, which is this whole ancillary approach, like what else can I sell to my passengers that matches their journey, whether it's on board or it's at their destination, experiences, bookings of hotels, etc. But also more in the direction of retail, catering. How can I pre-order my favorite dish on a long journey? And as a lot of the short haul traffic will actually be forced to migrate from aircrafts to rail because of new regulations in the EU and other places. There's actually going to be a new renaissance for traveling by train, and so there's a big opportunity for railway operators to actually improve on that customer experience digitally.
So, Kian, just drawing the threads together, if there were three things that you'd like to say to the audience right now, in terms of future casting, in terms of the key trends that you identify, what would they be?
I would say the very first one and most important one for airlines would be, but not even just for airlines, would be you need to own your customer data. Don't give it to your operators or let your operators be in charge of owning that data. You as the airline need to be in charge of that data because you know at what points in the journey can you sell what to your passengers. This is the very clear thing. If you're still thinking of just outsourcing everything, you are behind the curve. You need to start owning that customer data. The second step is definitely to think more away from being a mobility company to being an experience company and offering much more than just the flight and flight-related products or the journey and journey-related products, but how can you see this person, which is a holistic person. It's not just a traveler, it's also a person that has other needs than travel. So how can you address those needs that a passenger might have at different stages of that relationship you have with them? So really to think more out of the box in how can you capture more of that of the ancillary market. And I would say the third aspect is definitely that airlines need to work on making sure that these silos that hold the data really start consolidating the data so that, because it is essentially the foundation of doing anything digitally. And this has already happened in many cases, but it is a slow process with some big legacy carriers. But ultimately, that will make it possible to increase penetration and conversion for ancillary revenue significantly because, we have all gotten kind of blind to dumb advertising. And the more you can personalize the advertising to someone's real interests and choices, the higher the conversion is. And we have seen conversions up to 7%, for example, on personalized email campaigns, where, in the classic email affiliate marketing, people are happy to get 0.1%. Yeah, so really the more you personalize, the more data you utilize, the more efficient these programs will become. And the only one that can drive this is the actual airline themselves.
Kian Gould, thank you for your time.
Thank you.